So now, let's talk about computed properties. Here we have our simple counter example where we're tracking count inside of a reactive object and destructuring it with two refs, as we saw before in the last video. Now, what if you wanted to create a computed property that returned double of whatever count currently is? Your first instinct might be to declare a constant called double count, where you assign it a value of state.count times 2. And so then we'll go ahead and return it inside of our object so that our value of double count is exposed to the component. And while this looks like it would work at first glance, this doesn't work in the sense that double count is not reactive. Remember, we're in plain JavaScript. And so what we'll need is another helper method. Remember, our goal is to create a computed property, so Vue aptly names the helper method we need as computed. And so what we do is we call the computed method, and it's passed a callback function which will then return the data that we want to automatically update. In this case, state.count times 2. And just like that, double count is now a computed property. And just so you know, you don't need to declare a brand new variable in order to declare a computed property. You can also include it inside of the reactive object as you see here, and then you don't even need the extra export at the bottom inside of the object. And this is also perfectly valid syntax as well. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into some code together. To follow along, let's check out the branch computed property begin. And let's open it in VS Code. And let's go ahead and open our app.vue file again. As we did in the last lesson, our state is already inside of a reactive object. And so what we want to do is move our computed properties here inside of our setup method. And so the approach I'm going to take with this is to actually move it directly inside of our reactive object. And so now I'm going to go ahead and start by cutting the game complete. And then we're going to paste it. Let's do it towards the top as a way of easily seeing what's going on. And so remember though, we also need the actual computed helper method. And so I'm going to go ahead and just call it here. So computed, and we'll wrap our entire function here, and then declare our error function here. And now all we need to do is import it at the top here. And then when we save, we now have our computed property game complete inside of our setup method. And so let's go ahead and do that one more time with our task progress. I'm going to go ahead and cut that over, which means now we can delete all of our computed options. And then inside of here, we're going to go ahead and copy and paste this. Let me add the comma. And then we're going to go ahead and similarly declare this to be a computed property, which takes a callback function, and make sure that's a wrap properly. And then when we save, now it looks good. Now, the only thing we need to do before we move on is remember that this context that we are calling inside of our computed property no longer exists. So what we need to do now is refer to the minigames correctly, which in this case is state.minigames. So if I replace this with state.minigames and replace this with state.minigames and save this, when we jump over to our browser, we'll see that everything still works as expected. And so to get some practice on your own, I present you with this challenge. Check out the Computed Properties Challenge branch and use the Composition API to manage the computed properties inside of passwordgame.vue. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next video where we talk about methods inside of the Composition API.